Hi, I'm Dick Cavett, and I'm lucky today to have Anthony Hopkins with me. It'll be a long time before any of us will get the image of the cannibalistic Hannibal Lecter out of our minds from Silence of the Lambs. But his current film adds to the list of the brilliant things he's done on the screen with a very different kind of personality, and it's the great E.M. Forster novel, Howard's End. Welcome.
Good to be here.
To get this out of the way right away, what are you sickest of in terms of people coming up and joking to you about, the way they come up to magicians and say, "Can you make my mother-in-law disappear?" Do people come up and say, "Hey, Hannibal, would you?"
I bite them on the nose.
Bite, yeah.
And on the ear.
Just
and the heels.
definitely,
And they scalp they go across the street.
Sometimes
they cross the street before I get to them.
Okay. People do realize it's you, though, do they? Even though you, sitting here now, do not look precisely like the demon you created on the screen.
No. It is funny, though, because I've done a few interviews the last few days, and people do think that I'm going to bite them. And I don't think they're pretending, but they are a bit nervous, and they start laughing nervously.
I don't know if you could sense it, but I was at a thing last night where you walked out upon a stage briefly at some ceremonies before the screening of the movie. And when you entered, there was a sort of ooh around me, as well as the applause. Yeah. So for a time, you will know what Boris Karloff must have felt like.
Yes.
Only cliche I can think about you is the fact that you're an immense star who had an unhappy childhood, or do you want to correct me on that?
Well, I could correct you a little. I think it's a sort of misquote. I didn't have an unhappy childhood as such. I mean, my parents were loving parents. I was the only child who was a bit lonely, that's all. I had a lonely school career.
Okay.
That's what it was, and I was and it dogged me for years and years and years. And I don't regret 1 minute of it, because it was the rocket fuel that made me become an actor, to compensate for all that loneliness and lack of confidence and all that.
Yeah, I see how I misstated it now, because just about everything I've read about you has talked about the fact that at school you felt you couldn't learn anything. You either would or couldn't learn mathematics. You felt you didn't belong anywhere. You thought you were...
That's true. That is all
I think they
true.
convinced you were stupid.
Yes, they did.
And, but what saved you? You were a musician?
I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a pianist. I still play, I'm not that good, but I mean, I don't play in front of people because I get embarrassed by it, so I just play for my own place. I played a lot of classics. And I wanted to be a concert pianist. Actually, I just wanted to be very famous because I wanted to meet Claire Bloom. That's all, because I fell in love with...
Specifically Claire Bloom?
Claire Bloom, because I saw her in the film Limelight with Charlie Chaplin. I thought, I've got to become famous. I've got to become successful, because then I'll meet her. So I thought I'd become a musician. I don't know why. I thought, well, if you get well known, you meet all these movie stars and actresses. Anyway, I became an actor 20 years later. I did actually work with her, and we played Man and Wife in The Doll's House on film.
Now, we're always told that when our dreams come true, they're a little disappointing. How did she disappoint you?
Oh, she didn't. She was okay. So, no, she was very nervous at the time. And, she was fine.
Did you ever tell her that you were specifically, she was one of your dreams as a small boy?
No.
When I asked you about the music, I was thinking about, as a kid, you could at least survive on the fact that you could play a bit and do what we call imitations of your teachers.
Oh, yes. Well, that was my defense, because I couldn't belong amongst my colleagues in school, my contemporaries. The only bridge to kind of normal living was for me to mimic schoolmasters and impersonate these school teachers and anyone in authority. And then I developed it as time went by and became quite astute at imitating movie stars and actors and politicians. And I also played the piano. I was a very lonesome, solitudinous child, and I used to play the piano and improvise, and looked very sad and felt very sad. But all this was fodder for my future as an actor, I guess.
Yeah, if you can survive the childhood, it'll all be grist for the mill later on.
Yeah, well, most people say
that
childhood is the most painful part of one's life, I think.
Yeah, and someone said anyone who thinks he really had a happy one is deluded, as they find out of their psychoanalysis. Yeah. It seems to me everybody in Wales is related. There only seem to be about 5 family names. Everyone's is either an Evans or a Richards or
That's right, Jones, Davis.
Yeah. So you and I might be. I had a Welsh grandfather.
Yeah.
Now, the part of Wales you came from, what accent would your headmaster have had?
Well, he was Welsh. He was a rugby player and played They got what they got his rugby cap, which means that he played international rugby for Wales. That was in my last school. His name was Idwyl Rees. He spoke with a strong Welsh accent. He was a tyrant of a man. And
how would he greet a class or discipline? Could you give us some?
He used to shut up and stand up straight and quiet and all that. And then
did he trill his R's?
Oh, I know. Actually, I've got a very close Welsh accent, although it's sort of modified.
Yeah.
I was born in the same town as Richard Burton. Richard had a much more cultivated voice than mine.
Do Burton for a second.
Burton, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
I would swear
I
he
saw him
was
in
sitting here.
But I've got a much more rapid delivery than Richard. I suppose because I've got maybe a much more, I don't know, maybe I've got a faster rhythm or something. But,
and did you get his autograph as a kid?
I did. I was 15 years of age, and I went to his house in Caraddock Street. Caraddock, there's a Welsh name. Caraddock Street in Taibach, Port Talbot. Yeah. And knocked on the door, praying that he wouldn't answer it. And his sister came to the door, and I said, it's Richard Burton. And she said, come in. She said, Richard, it's Dick Hopkins' boy, Dick Hopkins in the baker. So I went in, and there was Richard shaving with an electric razor. He had a T-shirt on. And I'd never seen anyone with an electric razor. And his wife, Sybil, was sitting at the table reading the morning paper. He said, what do you want? I said, I've an autograph, please. He said, all right. Where are you from? I said, Commercial Road, Taibach. He said, I used to work in the co-op shop across there, in the shoe shop. He said, I was hopeless. So I immediately, there was a kindred spirit, because he was hopeless at his job, and I was hopeless.
Burton was hopeless. There might be hope.
There was hope, yes.
We'll be back. We'll take a pause, and we'll be right back with Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins. Burton, what we were talking about earlier, on a show I did with him, I tremulously raised the subject of booze. And I said, would you talk about it? And as you know, he did, and he looked into the camera and delivered a very moving speech, really, about if it's your enemy as well as it is mine, I know what you're going through, and so on and so on. This was actually clipped out and used by AA and others because it was so well done. Now, you fall into the same category. You've had a period that's always written about excessive boozing and wildness, and if you think O'Toole and Burton were something, you should have seen Hopkins at his best or worst, and so on, and you've beaten it.
Yeah, I was pretty mild, really, compared to those two, those Hellraisers.
You declined the title, do you?
Yeah, I did. I gave up the championship. Yeah. I was just a nuisance more than anything. I wasn't really a Hellraiser. I was just in a lot of trouble. I was just a nuisance. Yeah. And one day, some years ago now, I stopped. I thought, this is crazy. And I was very tired and fed up with myself, and I stopped. Was
it just an act of will? Did you have help?
I got some help for it, and and I realized that I wasn't alone with it, and that was the end of that. I'm glad to say, and I never thought it would be possible to live without it, because it was my only sustenance, it was my only way of coping. Mm-hmm. And now I've got into the habit over the years of not drinking, and life is so much better. You know.
My guess is that the Welsh have a higher rate of depression than other races. I haven't seen the statistics on it. We know the Scandinavians do.
Yeah.
And
it's a pretty gloomy land.
Yeah.
It's very isolated on the little peninsula. Mm-hmm. And they're very melancholy people. The Irish have got much more going for them because they're much more extrovert and crazier than the Welsh. The Welsh are rather repressed.
Yeah.
Good people, though. No, I don't have problems with being Welsh or non-Welsh or anything. But my Welsh colleagues will say, "What are you saying? You're a Welsh actor. You're not English." Yeah. I say, "Oh, forget it." So I say British now, just to hedge my bet.
If only England looked like it does in Howard's End all the time.
Now, isn't it beautiful?
I would have been happy to be in 1910 in England.
You enjoyed the film?
Very much. Isn't there a way in which it's a little easier for an actor to play an insane man than it is to play a terribly ordinary man who has dimensions to him that have to be seen? This man that you play is proper, he's repressed, he does not like the lower classes, he eventually collapses. It seems to me, in a way, it would be harder to play someone like that than to play a madman.
Well, because of one's vanity, you always wanted to look good, you always want to be the sympathetic character. So playing Wilcox, you don't have much chance. But what I try to do is, I'm wearing that silly cap, and looking like, whatever they call it. And, but it is difficult, but not as difficult as that. But it's much more fun playing the villains.
Is it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. To see what a son of a bitch you can be.
Yeah, he has much more dimension to it.
Yeah. Have you known any madmen? Other than those in our profession, I mean,
No, profession.
names that leap to mind right
Yes,
away.
I've never
I mean by
quite-
that, have you ever been in the back ward of an old asylum? Or
No, but I've actually met a madman who's on the loose in London, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
And I had coffee with him one day. I realised how nuts he was. And he never blinked. So I based
That's
lecturing.
interesting.
Never blinked. He kept asking me questions. Then before you could answer them, he'd ask you another one and another one. And in the end, it made you feel that you were in a different reality.
So at any given moment in talking with him, you didn't see the insanity?
No, he'd completely... it's like somebody I used to know, a woman who used to sort of kick you on the shins and then say, don't you have a sense of humour? And smile. That kind of madness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they could change reality for you, but those people can really manipulate you. I think Kathy Bates in Misery is the most brilliant piece of mad acting I've ever seen. You know?
Really? Yeah, sure.
Because
yeah.
I knew this woman in America, she was exactly like Kathy Bates in this film. You never know what you're going to do. You say you don't know how to handle them, you don't know how to... You can't pay them a compliment, you may say, and they say, what do you mean by that? You know?
Yeah. And as Hannibal, now I realize you didn't move a lot.
No, and I didn't blink.
And you didn't blink.
No.
It'd be fun to see it again now and see, check that out. A doctor I know who used to work in the old back wards of asylums said the scariest thing about the truly insane was that they seemed to be like many other people you had met.
Yeah.
And not, except for a moment when they were convinced that there was someone standing behind that door with a noose.
Yes.
And that it might be wise to avoid them as you leave the room or something. But
It is an uncanny experience playing, being with somebody who's mad.
do you agree that there's 5 or 6 people I could name in our business who, if it weren't for acting, would be locked up somewhere, but they have that wonderful outlet.
Well, we're not allowed to mention names. Yeah, there are a couple of those.
I mean, you've gotten to be Hitler, you've gotten to be Captain Bligh.
I think
Any
most actors are, I don't want to say that they're mad, but I think most actors are slightly damaged goods, we become actors. Because when you think of it, to go on stage in front of 800 people or whatever it was on the first night is kind of an act of
Not
madness.
a sign of mental health
No,
to
it's not
start
at
off
all.
with. I'm sorry I have to take a break now.
Okay.
It's interesting. We'll be right back. Seeing that reminds me what a good-looking film this is. By that I mean it's not only is England beautiful in it, but appropriately so. There are movies where the camera works great, but it has nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah.
And everything is of a piece in this. It may be, I don't know, the movie that's as faithful to a book as it is possible to be.
It's almost uncompromising in its faithfulness.
The book has, many fans, and we'll have more now, of course.
Yes. You think it'll be a hit here in America? Because Room with a View was.
Well, if it isn't, then it's one of several signs of our decline. But I should think it would. I can't imagine what people would find wrong with it. The feeling when you see a film, first time I had in my life was The Third Man.
Yes.
And I went out of it thinking, I have been totally entertained, there's nothing wrong with that film, and I am satisfied.
Yes.
And that's how I felt last night.
Part of where we filmed that in England, down in Surrey and Sussex, that is still ancient. You still get the ancient trees and the old woods down there. It's very untouched, all those bluebell scenes. That's all ancient English. That goes back 1,000 years. All the Normans trampled around there and the Romans were there. So it's still very ancient, very haunted.
And Henry Wilcox, your character, is really... I wonder if we have Henry Wilcoxes in America today. I suppose they're investment
usually
bankers on Wall
presidents, aren't
Street.
they?
What?
They're usually presidents.
Yes, they're often presidents.
Presidents of governments.
I wonder whether are our current politics baffling to people outside America these days? They've gotten so bizarre.
Yeah, they're pretty baffling. Our politicians are pretty baffling too. Nobody seems to know what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Nobody can sort out the muddle and the mess. Everyone's got a problem. It'd be great to actually hear a politician say, I don't know. They never say, I don't know.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah, they never say, sorry, I don't know.
We had one who did.
Jimmy Carter?
No, Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, yeah.
You have to reach back a ways.
Yeah.
But at some point he said, if I had all the wisdom of the world, I wouldn't know what to do about slavery.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's the last time on record, perhaps, that any president said anything, or even said, let me think about that question a while and come back, rather than reel off some glib answer.
Yeah.
Now, from Howard's End, what next? Dracula?
Dracula, I've done that, yes, with Francis Ford Coppola.
That's in the can, as we say?
That's all in the can. A month ago today we finished, in fact. He's an extraordinary director.
People would assume, of course, that you're playing the Count, but you're playing Van Helsing, I think.
I'm Van Helsing in this one, the crazy Van Helsing. Don't get to bite anyone on this one. Coppola's a terrific director to work with, and Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves, Gary Oldman. It was a long shoot. It was many, many long days, hours. I mean, sometimes I go to sleep in the dressing room and somebody comes in and says, "Can we have you on set now?" I said, "What time is it?" 11:45. I said, "Midnight." And so we go on set, and there's Francis walking around there, you know, in control of everything, tireless. We were all dropping. I've got a lot of energy, but...
It seems like movie making is designed to get everybody else perfect while the actors are worn out by the time they're ready to shoot.
I always take I read a lot of books. But you know, it's a funny thing working with Coppola. I realise how much a director's medium it is. I mean, the actors get a look in, but I mean, he's the boss, he's the governor, and it makes life easier because then you don't have to take much responsibility. You go in and Francis directs you like a traffic cop, and he comes up with some amazing scenes, and at the end of the day you think, well, that's great, you know. I used to go in every morning not sure what was going to happen, and at the end of the day I thought, what happened? That was an incredible day's work. Somebody
knew what he was doing.
He did, yeah.
What do you do when you're stuck in a film where you realize the director's a klutz after you've already filmed a while? Well, in your earlier days, you were said to walk out of those films.
Oh, yes, I've walked out of a few in recent days, but it's difficult. You know, there's no good pretending, you know, that you're going to enjoy it if you've got a bad director or a sadistic director. Oh, no. That's something I'll never actually get over. I always fight back in those situations. But once you've done that, it's a dead end anyway. You can never get back onto the track again. Because once there's anger and rage on set, you've had it, I think.
You might as well leave. It would probably
may
be
as well
better
leave.
for the film.
But there are some people who actually have to thrive on that, you know.
Yes. The tougher it is, the more...
they believe that it's more creative. It's not. It's a load of rubbish. It's a crock of rubbish, really.
Here you were, that small boy in Wales, never knowing that you'd be starring in Howard's End and other films, meeting Chaplin, meeting all the people you dreamed about. You've worked with everybody would envy, it seems like.
Yeah.
Could you have done without the knowledge that Laurence Olivier and Danny Kaye may have had a homoerotic relationship over 10 years?
Well, I don't believe it. They were both great artists, both of them.
It's a recent book is just out, and this is the hot item in it.
It's all such rubbish. I mean, maybe they did. I mean, that's up to them. But they were both, great artists, supreme artists, and it doesn't matter. I don't really care. I mean, who gives a damn about all that? The poor guy's dead now. They're both dead. When they let them rest, you know, I'd rake up all that stuff.
Do you know either of them well enough to know what this rumor would have done to them if it had surfaced during their lifetime? Would they?
I think it would have driven Olivier mad. Now, he was a depressive. He was a very troubled man. He always looked like sort of the Rock of Gibraltar, but he was a very troubled man. He got very hurt with criticism, and he suffered a lot in his life. He was a very oversensitive man. I think it would have killed him, actually, to find out that.
Really?
Yeah, I don't believe it anyway.
Yeah. He went through that 10-year period of stage fright and all kinds of horrors.
He used to have people standing in the wings so he could watch them. So he always wanted to run off stage.
So he wouldn't feel alone on stage.
Yeah, and people sometimes would go on stage with him and just stand there, and they'd leave him because he was terrified of losing his lines. He said to me once, we were drinking together, I was going over his lines, he was doing a long day's journey tonight, and he said to me, he sat up, he'd been drinking a lot of whiskey, and he said, do you know, he said, if I'd never been an actor, he said, I would have probably either become a killer or have ended up in the asylum.
That's what we were talking about earlier, isn't it?
Yeah, and then he laid out and he said, what's the next line? He's a chronic depressive.
Yeah.
A great man, a great actor.
I wish I had a collection of things that great actors envy about other actors. I remember Richardson saying once, I don't have Larry's fine fury.
I don't have it at all.
Oh, that's good. Will you teach me to do that
I don't
afterwards?
have his fine fury. He has the charm of 12 people. My goodness. I always remember he said,
I'm jealous of you.
Oh, he's got the charm of 12. Gilbert said, of course, I mean, he's so vulgar, isn't he, Laurence? I mean, he's so vulgar. Wonderful actor, but so common, so terribly vulgar. Could never resist having him go.
Oh, Lord.
No one was sacred in Gielgud's presence.
Well, I'm terribly sorry this time has ended so quickly. Thank you for being here in all your persona. Good luck on Howard's End, though you're not going to need it. And just keep on working.
It's good to see you again. Good to be back.
Anthony Hopkins. We'll see you next time.